Hello and welcome to another macro video. We've got 3 more new macros and I've actually got another 11 to go that have been sitting waiting to go in my book for a while, but I haven't had time to write them up, so I'm gradually working through them. And anyway, here's another 3. So the first one, slightly odd sounding thing, highlight certain characters with attributes. So the idea here is that we've got certain characters in the text which have, say, italic or bold or super or subscript, and we want to be able to highlight them to draw attention to them while we're reading. If it's just characters we want to highlight, then we can easily do it with Fredit using a global find and replace like those, and putting a highlight on. So that's a wildcard find looking for either an angle bracket or an angle bracket, a plus or a minus, and replacing it with itself and adding the colour, and ditto for the hyphen and the M dash there. So let's have a look at an example of something we might want to highlight. So here's my bit of text. So if I copy that, put it in a new document ready to look at, and now I want to get my Fredit list, and if I put that into a separate document then it'd be safer. So that's there. Let's move it out of the way, down there. Right, so there's the text that we're going to work on, and just run that Fredit list on it. So if we run Fredit, then that highlights those things that it was specifying there. Now, if we have a look at this and blow it up a bit, we can see there are certain things there that you might see what you can spot, if you like. If I just hesitate a second and just let you have a look at that, you can see if you can spot any funnies there. Have you got any of them? So how about this one, a superscripted number 0. If you run whatchar, it tells you that it's a superscripted 0. So that we would want drawing to our attention. Now, what about this one? Did you spot that? If I stick a comma in there, you can see the difference. This one is italic, and that one's not. So it's a comma in italic that we would want to highlight. Exclamation mark there. Now if you have a look at these, can you wind it up a bit further, can you spot any funnies in this one? The half symbol's fairly easy to see, look. The 2 there, that's superscripted 2, which is in italic. There's a number there which is in italic, which it shouldn't be. Now there is another couple in there which are even more difficult to spot. Have you found them yet? How about looking at that space there and looking at that space there? So that one, if I bring down the icon bar there, you can see it's superscripted. So that's a superscripted space. Difficult to see, but the idea of this macro is that it's going to highlight that sort of thing. So we can get rid of that one. So here's our document, and we're going to run the macro which is called highlight certain characters, and this is just to show you that you can add this to the end of your, well, anywhere really, on your Fredit list, so that those characters are highlighted each chapter you go to. So let's try it. So it's highlight with this function key. There we go. So we've got the number superscripted, we've got the comma, exclamation mark, thin space there because it's not a thin space, it's thin because it's superscripted, and yes, there is one there which was revealed earlier, which is the minus sign, and that's not a minus sign. So if you put a dash there, you'll see that it's not lined up. It's a dash, not a minus sign. Okay, so that is that one. Yep. that's good. So we can get rid of that document and move on to our next macro, which, oh no, can't. We've got to look at how we set it up, because you might not be wanting to highlight the same things I wanted to highlight. So we've got all at the beginning of the macro there, we've got all the options as to what various things are in what colours. So the superscripted zeros, actually that was earlier, before I fiddle around with it, that was bright green. The 0 means don't do that, so don't highlight it. So superscripted now, zeros are now going to be bright green, italic commas bright green. Now the colons here, bold and not bold, I thought that might be quite useful for head words, because some head words, if you have bold head words, it might be followed by a colon, and you might want those colons bold to follow the head word, or you might want them to be Roman. And so what you do is to highlight the one you don't want. So if they're not supposed to be bold, then you do it that way around. If they are supposed to be bold, then you would make that one 0 and that one pink or whatever. Superscripted spaces, italics, any numbers. So that number 2 we had that was in italic and shouldn't have been, that's revealed by that. Sorry, no, that's the superscripted ones. The ordinary number 2 is revealed by this one in grey, and these two here, these are just ordinary symbols, so those I could do just with an ordinary find and replace, but for what it's worth, they're available in the macro as well. You can you can highlight all the diacritics, for example, or whatever. In that case, also I've got there a slash and an N dash, and then this one is for different colour, yellow, for other symbols, again within the square brackets of a wildcard find and replace. And in the middle here we've got this extra bit, which is a Unicode character, and that's the character or the number 8722 for a minus sign. So that's the plus and the minus in there, and then half in here, that is the italic symbols, so any symbol but in italics. Right, so you can set that up for the way you want to work. Next one is making a sublist of items in a list. So we might have a list of citations. So let's select our list here and let's put those into a separate document. Here we go. Right, so we might want to select, make a sub-list of all those citations that are in 1997 or something, or maybe in the 1990s. So if we want that, if we select the 199 and run list of lists, or list of list, with an F2, here we go, it's picked up the fact that I'd selected 199, and so it'll find any document any item in the list which has 199 in it, and it's actually double spaced them because the list of lists has this option here, add blank line equals true or false. So if I make that false and run it again, well, let's run it again, but let's use a different option. Let's click in the word and run it. So it's picked up the fact that I was in the and it's given me that as is that what you want? I mean, I can type something else in there. I could type the 199 in there or whatever, but let's do the and press return. So they're not spaced now. The reason for the adding the spaces is that although this is a list, I mean, all a list is just a series of short paragraphs. So the same macro could be applied to finding any paragraph that has such and such a, so it might be any paragraph that has a reference to engineering engraver or whatever. So you can use it for other purposes there. Right, so let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that and move on to the next one, which is listing all the tagged section numbers, section headings. So what's the purpose of this? It's the most obvious thing is that if you create a list of all the headings that have got tags on, then those are all the items that will be sequentially numbered with the hierarchy, and then you can ask the question as to whether they are in consecutive. So let's try running it. I've got a document here which is carefully arranged so you can't see it because it's a live document. It's an old document, but it's a live one, so shouldn't really be displaying it. So if I run list of tagged headings, which is number 3, so there we go. So it's, here we go, let's get rid of the visible characters. So we've got all those, and we can ask the question whether they are consecutive, and suppose we just deliberately make them not. If I put a 3 in there, so it's out of order. We do have a macro from of old, which is, we'll check the consecutivity, if that's the right word, or consecutiveness, and that is snappily titled Number Sequence Checker Hierarchical. So if we try running that, and that's 4, it doesn't do much good because that particular macro is expecting the lines, the numbers for each line to be against the left margin. So we need to get rid of those A's and B's and C's, the tags, and so we can use a find and replace, one I prepared earlier. So if I get that one and create a new document and put it in there, then I can run that by running Fredit. So it's taken out all of the tags. Let's get rid of that. So we can try again the number sequence checker hierarchical, and it's immediately spotted that that is wrong there, so I can go and correct it. If we start again from there, it goes all the way down. Yep, they're all hierarchical, and that's fine. I did that macro, and then I thought, I've just remembered there is another way of doing that, because I've already got a macro. Just get rid of that one. I've got a macro called contents list by tag. So it creates a whole contents list, but when I tried it, it did produce what I wanted, but it took rather a long time. So this list of tagged headings is not redundant because it will produce that list very quickly, whereas for the book that I've got here as an example, it took a couple of minutes to actually run and generate the contents list. So here's the contents list that it generated. So we can try the hierarchical number checker again. Let's again put in an error and see what we get. So we go to there, run the checker, goes through to the end and says yes, they're fine. Why is that? Well, the answer is, again, similar to the previous one. If we switch the visible formatting, we've actually got tabs there, so it won't spot the inconsistency. So let's get rid of those. So we need to do a find and replace to get rid of those tabs. So we will have to do, we don't want a wildcard, we want a return followed by a tab, and to replace that by a return. So replace all, That seems to have done it, but I know that there are some subheadings, so if I run it again it finds another 26, so there we go. So we can now try checking the hierarchy, and it finds that error. So if I go beyond and run again, it goes right through, right down to the end. So if we look back, then you can see there, look, we've got some subheadings there. It's found those. Okay, alright, so let's get rid of that. Nearly there, but when I was doing this list of tagged headings, I thought, I could do virtually the same thing, but with the tags for the figures, the tables, and the boxes. So I just copied the macro and created this other one, but then I realized that that is redundant because I've already got this macro which lists all the figures, tables, and box captions called figure table box lister. So if we run that on our sample here, so that's fig tab, whatever it is, fig table box lister. Run that, and that is very quick, so move that out the way again. So what we've got here is the figures and the tables, so we can check the consecutiveness of them, but again we've got the same problem that we need to get rid of that. So I use my find and replace. I'm going to need a space in there because and replace it with nothing. There we go. So that's got rid of those, and so I can do my hierarchy again, and it found an error here, which is interesting, which isn't, as you can see, if I wind it up, it's not an error apparently, but if you look at the formatting, it actually is an error because there's a space on that one. This isn't a space, this is actually a thin space. Because this is 5.2 amps, 5.2a, so there's an error in my use of Threadit. I've been putting thin spaces for the ampere units, and so of course I hadn't realised that it also puts in the thin space there. Anyway, so if I try and run from there, there's another 7.2 amps, and then try again. So it's found the end of those. And we could do the same again for the tables, but it's the same difference. So that's that, and actually I think that's it. We've come to the end, so I'll go away and have a go at the other 11 macros that need to go in the book. Okay, thanks for watching.